Oh, 'tis the season. More Christmas light issues. So, we lost all of our lights outside. We're going to test what's going on here. Volts AC, because it's an extension cord. I'm going to start here first. And I have this button, I'm going to turn it on. And that should be, interesting. That should be giving me 110 volts. And it is not. I wonder why. Nope. So, something's up with this extension cord. It seems. I'm going to test this outlet. We're outside, so it's noisy. Alright, wait a second. Wait a second. So is my meter being honest with me? I know this outlet works. So let's see if it's a meter issue or an outlet issue. That's not good. So why is my meter not working? Interesting. It's not giving me a backlight. So I need to troubleshoot my meter because it's not working. Maybe. I don't remember. A long time. Maybe it's something easy like batteries. Alright, so let's troubleshoot the device that helps us troubleshoot. There we go. Those just go over. Oh, just a 9-volt battery. All right. That's most likely the culprit. Oh, I'd love to test the battery, but I can't test the battery because the tester doesn't work. Oh, it's definitely dull. See if I could find a 9-volt battery. The lesson here is sometimes the tools can send you down the wrong path if they're not working correctly. So, yeah, be right back to square one with the troubleshooting, but well. All right, so I don't have a 9-volt, but I did have somewhere that I could source one. The smoke detector. Don't worry, I'm putting it right back. But we're in troubleshooting mode here, so let's just leverage that. See if this does what we need to do. Light lights up. So it's interesting because I thought that as long as I was able to read this, that the battery was good. And maybe that's not the case. So don't assume. And then we'll switch this to DC. We're going to test this other battery. This is the battery that was in there. It says 8 volts. So yeah, that's definitely not 9 volts. All right, so and I'm gonna make sure this is on AC. And 119. All right, so that's got power. before we started. Sometimes our tools let us down. Okay, plug that in. So this is going outside. So this is the next part of it. Let's see what's going on here. Let's do it this way. Oh, you can see both, hopefully. I don't know if that helps or not. Helps me see. That's good. That's good. So you can see very different than when I started with, where I thought this was bad. Okay. So I'm going to put this back outside and then start working through the lights to figure out where the break is in the electrical circuit. And this goes with pretty much anything as you're trying to troubleshoot and track back. So start from the source of power and start working your way through. My guess is there's a fuse out there that blew in one of those cords, and we're gonna work through it and figure out what it is. When you have these kind of lights, you got to check to see if they're for indoor and outdoor. This one happens to say, which I was kind of surprised that it says for indoor and outdoor use, because there's no ground on it. So maybe that is not the issue. I'm going to show you a couple things though. So this isn't working, this first strand. We're going to start with that and track that strand back. And here goes traps. To here. Oh, there's a gap there. Interesting. Still no bueno. Okay. We're going to go ahead and unplug this. And it does. Okay. So I'm now going to take this, bypass the first set of lights, and just plug it in to this one here. And see what happens. Again, hard to do this while you're holding a camera. Ooh, still nothing. Interesting. So, bypassing the first set of lights isn't doing it. Alright. So if we go in here, you can see it's got power to the back. Interesting. So let's see if it's got power all the way through to the other end of the cord. There's a fuse in here, and I assumed the fuse was for everything, including this this connector, but it might not be. The fuse might just be for the light strip, so we're going to learn something today. We'll know if that's the case or not. I kind of expected to put that in there and have this not give me any power. Again, thinking that fuse, there's a fuse in here, that worked for everything behind it, like the lights and the socket. And that might not be the case. So we'll see what we find out here. What I'm going to do now is go to the other end of the light, which is through here, which is definitely comes up and goes through the lighted circuit, and we'll test that. Do this. So as I do this, I'm wiggling these back and forth to make sure I have contact, because sometimes they're loose. I got nothing to this point. So here's my thinking. I'm thinking that this is a fused circuit for the lights and for what comes after, and that I almost dropped my meter. That would have been bad. That's not a cheap one. So I'm thinking that this is directly connected to here and not fused. So this outlet has power, meaning there's power coming up through here, but something in this circuit isn't working. So let's start again. We want to go back as close to the source of the issue as possible. you don't troubleshoot from the other end. You want to work your way to the issue from the source. So the source is the power. We know we have power going to here. So I'm going to unplug this and we'll get into that. So in case you don't know, many of these plugs have fuses built into the plug itself, and it protects everything behind it. So on this one you can see it says open, and it says use only 125 volt fuses, and it tells you what the fuses are. So to open, it says go that way. It's pointing that way. So I'm just going to take this, slide it, so just sliding it down like that. And now there are those fuses. Access to them. And now, do that to get the fuse. Oh, that's not good. So the fact that that just came apart in my hand tells me that the ends are not connected. This thing's supposed to be in one piece. There's a small filament or wire, I'm going to say wire, that goes between these two ends. Okay? And that's smaller than the gauge of the wire in here, which means that if you get short or something like that, this is going to be your point of failure. You want to have a point of failure in the circuit so you don't fry everything else. So this is the smaller gauge wire will burn basically, or disconnect because it'll get too hot, and that saves everything else. So obviously that wire that connects these two ends, not here. I have not actually seen them fall apart like that, but that is definitely an issue. Let's get this other one out. Okay, that one did the same thing. Oh, and this one's even, you can even see there's a burn mark there. So yeah, that fuse is fried. So I will need to get those, put it in, see if that fixes this light. But before I do that, the fact that I plugged in another set of lights and did the same thing means it might be the same thing. Now here's the thing. I hope it's just the fuses. You're happy when a fuse goes and it doesn't take everything else out. Now you have to figure out why the fuse went. That's a whole other issue, because something caused that. But it should have saved this string of lights. So I put those new fuses in, they should work. Before I do that, I want to make sure there's no water where it shouldn't be and all that kind of stuff. But first things first, need to get fuses. Now, I also want to show you this real close. If you can see it, so I need to get up clear. So again, this is unplugged. But you see the brass right here. That and the brass right here, and there's a space in between, so it's isolated. So the only thing that connects this part here to the lights, and by the way, we know, and we'll test it actually, but our understanding is that this back here is not fused, because that had power when the other end did not. So to test that, you can see these are disconnected, so there'll be no connection to the rest of the lights. So we're going to go ahead and just close this. And then we'll plug this in with no fuses and see what happens with this. There you go. So that confirms, because there are no fuses in there, that just because the back of this works doesn't mean that the rest of it does. So it's basically two circuits. There's a direct connection between the prongs here to these, so there is no fuse, which makes sense because it's, there's nothing to protect there per se. And the fuse only deals with the lighting circuit. Okay, so we've confirmed that as well. We learned this first strand is bad. Go up. We've plugged in the second strand. And none of these are working. So the second strand has an issue. That doesn't mean they all do. So let's again work back. So those are unplugged. Go back, just unplug this. And this is the next strand. So let's go ahead and plug this strand in. Ah, and we have light. So nothing's wrong with this strand right here. It actually lights up everything else. Ooh. Yeah, I'm just gonna say I did not do this. Don't. I'm just fixing what's there. All right. So the rest of this one look good. So what I can do is effectively just plug it into here for now, so that these lights, so that it bypasses the two strands that I need to probably get fuses for. I'll have to grab those, and I still have lights. So Mama will be happy that the lights work, at least most of them. So going to do that. Also going to go through here because it's my sneaking suspicion that water got into these or something and caused that short. So I'm going to go ahead and tape these up now that I see how they're set up, and see if I can't protect that a bit. But bypass these two strands. Need to get fuses to fix those, but have lights working, which is good. I was hoping this wasn't like all of these were screwed up because something backfed all the way through. So the fuse popping at the first two was good because it saved the rest of them. So no issues there. We'll put some tape on these, make sure the water doesn't get in there, and go from there. Just want to show this stellar job. Not really. But closed off the end, taped around the seams here, just to give it a little bit of protection anywhere that there could be some water getting in. And this thing has got some tension on it, which I don't like, but I'm just going to ignore that for now. You can see, basically cover this to make sure no water gets in there, and then wrap it, and wrap that. You know, it's like 20 cents a tape, but should help keep the water out, and hopefully that works. So I could not find just the fuses locally. It didn't look too hard actually. I went to the dollar store and found lights that were $2.75. So what I did is I bought those lights because they were cheap, and with the lights there usually comes, you know, a bag that has extra lights and fuses. So got 2 strands of lights. In case it's something more than the fuse, I could just replace the lights, be back to where we were. But what I want to do first is go ahead and replace these fuses in the lights that are out there already set, see if that fixes those. If it does, then we have these other 2 sets of lights, which we needed more lights for the tree anyway. So I just figured I'd kill a couple birds with one stone here and reuse the fuses from inside these packages. Now, most of the time these packages come with the lights and you lose them. So I'm pretty sure at one point I put all of this in a bag, like a baggie, in the box with the lights. I can't even find the box with the lights at this point. So anyway, hang on to these things because they're good for circumstances like this. All right, gonna go throw those fuses in, see if that fixes the lights. Like that. Push it forward. If I don't show the struggles too, then I'm not being real, am I? All right. The struggle is real. Just go in. Too much. Something is fighting me. Oh, it's this that's fighting me. Interesting. Why is that fighting me? like that. Push it down. There we go. So that back one was just a little bit tight. All right. Now we'll close this. Plug it in and then look. Let there be light. So just replace those fuses. Now I have this strand. I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other strand, and we'll be back in business. Then we'll have the other 2 strings of lights that I could throw on the tree. Alright, so the fuses in the first one helped. The second thing, I took this out and I checked it, and I could still see the filament in both. So I basically put the fuses back in. I tweaked the connection just a little bit because I just thought it was a loose connection and these things got banged around. So the lights are working. Let's see, on both of these strings I have some lights out. And these are out to right here. So definitely need a little bit more work to figure out what's going on with these. I think what I'm going to do though, because I have that other strand, those other strands, I'm going to replace these strands, and then I'll look at these more in the office where it's not as cold or wet. See if I can get these working again, put them back in service. It'll be easier when they're not all out here in the weather and wrapped around everything. Okay, so I have this set of lights that was, part of it's working, part of it's not, and I just want to be a little bit scientific about it. Yeah, they're these lights and what most people do, and myself included, $2.50 or whatever at the dollar store, you can just replace them. Not worth all of that usually. But what if you have a bigger strand, or you know, you have the parts and pieces to make them work, and you don't have to spend that money. And just understanding how it works, I think, is important. So I want to walk through some of this. Honestly, I don't know how all of it works. I know the concepts of it, but I've never actually worked through how this works. Why there's 2 wires that come in here and then 3 from there, and how that all works. How we've lost half of this. So just going to kind of walk through and discuss basic circuits and stuff as we go, because a lot of this stuff, and, you know, you'll hear me say this multiple times in different videos, but everything comes down to simple. You can boil things down to simple most of the time. You know, a lot of times we overcomplicate things, and that confuses us, and then we get in our own heads, or whatever the case may be. But if you bring things down to their core, in electricity or electronics, everything comes down to a circuit. In computers, everything boils down to ones and zeros. You know, and it becomes less daunting if you can shrink it down to that. And there are ways to isolate and do that. So, circuits, you know, basically it's a circle. That's how I envision a circuit. When my kids were real little, I don't know, 4 or 5, young, it's something I wanted them to understand. So the circle is kind of the best way to describe it. Something's a circle. It's got to go out and come back around. And one side's negative, one side's positive. You connect it. The simple circuit is, you know, you have a battery and you connect a wire from one side of the battery to the other, and then so that's just, you know, looping through, but there's no load. So there's this energy source, and then there's a load, which is what actually happens. In this situation, it's these lights. Those are the load. That's what actually what consumes the electricity and does something. That's the load, and that's throughout electricity. You know, in a house, you know, you have a line and a load. The line is where it comes in. The load is what's drawing that power. So a light bulb. You know, if you have lights, you know, anywhere in your house, if you ever wire a switch, you know, there's a line side and a load side, and what happens is the line side always has power. The load side, when you flip the switch, connects and disconnects. So that's how a circuit works. Basically, if there's any break in that circuit, what consumes the electricity or does something won't work. Okay, so we have this half of the lights that aren't working. So I'm assuming there's an issue with the circuit somewhere. And what I'm going to do is demonstrate a couple things and just kind of work through this. So how the old school lights work is, if anything, if one light goes out, they all go out. Why is that? Because that circuit we were talking about, there'd be one line that goes through each side of the light bulb. Again, so give you a close up here, make more sense. You have basically, for a light to work, you have an in and an out, positive and negative. You have to flow through that, and in the light itself there's a filament. That's what actually lights up, and it's just like a small wire that connects. So there's a connection from here all the way to here, and that's what passes through and creates the circuit. All right, so the load uses that electricity, does something, and then passes and then connects the entire circuit. So everything after this would work. Now, the interesting thing here is this is burnt out, yet these lights work. Well, what happens if I take this out? They don't work. So everything in the circuit, which it seems like there are two separate circuits here, and we'll get into that as we track it back and see why that is. But the entire string of lights does not go out. But if I remove that, this whole half does. So what that tells me is there's something breaking the circuit over here. But also, I have a question, because if the circuit goes up and connects, as I just showed you, if that little filament completes a circuit, how is it that the lights, the circuit is still completed with that burnt out? So we're going to have to break into that and figure out what that's about. Maybe a white background will help. There are these two wires that just hang out, and that's what goes in. One goes in one side, comes out the other. That's what lights the light. Now the light, the bulb is burnt out. I have a bag of extras, so when you know that there's a specific one that's burnt out, you can just replace it. This is a blue one, no, a purple one. You can just replace it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one in. Okay, so bulb works and circuit works. But I do want to take a look at this one, because the circuit's isolated by these two things, right? So there's nothing, they don't connect in between, at least not that we see. It just goes right up into the bulb and it's separated. I want to pull this apart and see what we got. Oh, there we go, that was easy. So that's just basically the holder, and that's the light bulb. Now what I'm thinking is maybe in the bottom here these two connect. No, that doesn't make sense, because then it wouldn't work. Not sure what makes sure that the connection is still going on to the other ones. So I have to break into probably the socket. But we're just breaking this apart to see what it is. So that's just a container that holds this little bulb, which has these little leads that go in and bend around it. Pretty simple. So these things can get broken and not contact, but that's all it effectively is. And that's all there is to it. So I wanted to deconstruct it to see if there's anything in here that I didn't expect or made that connection. There is not. So you have these two wires coming out that stay separate from each other, and then there's this little inside the bulb itself. This is like some plastic, but basically what that does is that's an isolator. Those just serve as isolators to make sure the wires don't touch. Okay, so there's no filament, nothing connecting the two of these together. The filament, that thin wire, if I haven't said it already, probably have, that connects these two together, and it's very thin, and what happens is as electricity goes over it, it heats that up and causes it to glow, which is how you get light. Short version, again, somebody else can be more technical with it, but that's basically what it is. I try to simplify it, remember? So what I'm going to do with this, though, now that we have this thing all broken apart, I'm going to connect this to this, which effectively will close this circuit. I'm going to put it back in that there thing, and then I'm going to put it back in here very carefully. Don't do this at home. I'll probably shut off the power when I do that, because it's not going to be hard to push back in, because this will have power. But I want to basically prove the point that this just needs to connect, and if this connects, then the lights work. So I just want to follow that all the way through. You know, I know we in theory know that, but let's work it through. I'm going to turn the power off to these lights when I do it. But yeah, basically I'm just going to touch these two together, as you can see. Okay, and then these go through, there's a couple holes in here at the bottom that will be probably fun to reconnect in. Oh, got it. Okay. So again, this will basically be live wire because there's no protection of the actual bulb itself around it to isolate it. So throw a little piece of tape over this. And pick a bulb. Oops. Interesting. Does not work. Huh. This is why we test. That's off. There we go. I just didn't have, I twisted the wires a little bit better, but there's the concept. So you see if those two prongs touch each other in the bulb, it would allow light everywhere through because you're effectively completing that circuit. I wanted to confirm with the half that's working is if you disconnect, and this is another thing that's important, we talked about anything in the circuit breaks everything in the circuit. If the circuit is separated, nothing in the circuit is going to work. Now, if it's in, it is possible that just the first light burns out and everything after it, but just to prove that out, because we have a working set, at least the working half, I'm going to unplug one in the middle. So it's not like the things work up to that bulb that went out, because again, it's a circle. Circuit's a circle. So this whole circuit has to have power for any of it to have power. If there's no power, if it doesn't flow all the way through, none of it's going to work. That's what makes it nice and fun to track back what's wrong. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out why, try to figure out why only this part is an issue, or is working, and this isn't. What that tells me is this is not all one circuit. There's got to be some isolation somewhere. And I think that isolation is right here, which makes sense. So you can see there are 3 wires everywhere else. I don't know if you can see that. There are 3 wires everywhere else. Except for where it comes in here. There are only 2. There are only 2 here. And there are only 2 at the end here, this little end. So there's a 3rd wire that is used on this side and this side. Why? And how? And what? We'll just have to tear it apart and see. Oh, I think I know how this works. Okay, so let's look at this. Give you a close up to it. Again on this, so you can see. You see there are 3 wires here, only 2 here, but 2 go in the same side, and 1 comes out. My assumption is that these 2 come in, one goes to the bulb and the other one connects over to here. So effectively that bulb has to connect through this, down, and over. But I don't know. That would make sense. And here's the other thing. This is only a positive and a negative wire. Ground and a positive and a neutral, whatever. In DC it's positive, negative, positive and neutral. In AC or ground. So there are only 2 wires that go here. So in order for all these lights after here to work, we know that there's power, positive and negative, or positive and neutral in these 2 lines, or none of these would work after. So we know this works. So I need to figure out how this works, but this doesn't. So if this circuit was broken, if everything went through this bulb, and there's no power getting to this bulb, how does it transfer through? Again, just kind of looking at it, it seems like what would happen is this comes up, and like this middle one completes this circuit here, and this other one connects to the light bulb, which will basically give it, this will be the positive and this will be the negative, so these 2 end up being the negatives. But we'll track that back through, see what it is, but that seems to make the most sense. And also because there's only 2 going between these, that makes sense that this is the dividing circuit. Okay. Or the dividing light. Yeah, this divides the circuits because it's different. Positive and negative have to flow all the way through this to here, regardless of the light circuit. So we'll get to know why that is. And that brings up some other things to look at too. So simple, but when you kind of mix it all together, it can get complicated. But when we reduce it back to something simple and kind of walk through the steps, we'll have a better understanding of how things work, regardless of what it is. So sometimes you get through the process, you're like, oh, how does this? I don't understand. It's magic. Nothing's magic in the world of electronics or electrical. Alright, so as I'm looking at these, the rest of these only have 2 wires going into them, which would make sense. 2, anyone else? I would think the first one, yeah. So the first bulb and the last bulb would have 3, and I'll explain why I think that in a second. So I just want to verify that, and verify that, and that, and that, and that. So as I split these apart, you can see there's just positive, negative, positive, negative, and then this one here has 2 coming out of it. So 2 coming out, 1 going in, 2 coming out, and then the other wire connects to this, and then this is going to be, yep. So let's see, get you a little closer. We have 1 wire connecting this side, and then we have these 2 going around. So this is 1 wire to complete that circuit, and here's the second. So same wire goes in here. All the lights are on. Haha, easy for me to say. So effectively that means every single light bulb is on this 1 wire to go on one side and not the other. If you untangle these, that's what it does, all the way through. So that's one, that's the positive or negative circuit. We'll just, whatever, that's part of the circuit. And the other part is this other wire. So positive and negative. That negative part of the loop doesn't have to come into play until the end of the line for this circuit to complete that circuit. So you have a singular wire going in and out, and that's just, look at that like a single wire. You know, there's a load in the middle that allows it to light up, but that's just one part, you know, the positive part or the negative part, depending on how things are wired, of the equation. So this goes all the way through, and these other two wires loop through, and we'll get into why there are two of them, and you only need one. So they loop through, and then you can see, so we have singular wire coming in, and then we have this wire, that these two wires that come all the way through here together and come into this light bulb. And what this is this is the negative. Sorry, that's wrong. Negative and positive have to go through. So that's that circuit. Okay. This right here, this one here, would be the negative. This one, because that comes all the way through and continues on. And this is the positive. So there's your two sides. The reason this one is here is because this wire travels all the way through, bypassing this circuit here. So if a light bulb goes out on this circuit, it breaks the circuit. This wire is solid from the first light to the last light, which allows that power to pass through to these. So this connects directly to this, which makes power go to the second set of lights without a problem. So that's what this effectively is. So these two are like a big long extension cord, effectively, that wrap through the other lights to power the second half of the lights. And if this gets broken, the circuit, which would be connected to one side of this light bulb, and then it would flow through here, back down into this, to carry out the load. And again, this is directly connected. In here, those two have to be connected like that. I think that'll make more sense. Those two are connected like that. So this is the circuit, and these two are connected to each other, which allows the power from all the way over from the first bulb to this one, bypassing the circuit itself, because this wire is connected here, and this wire is connected directly to the negative here. Okay? Might seem a little confusing, and I might not be explaining it the best, but that's how that works. So these two are not together. It's these two that are together. And that is seen as one circuit, one way through. Okay, so that's why we have half of the lights that work and half of them don't. Because there's basically a cheater wire, we'll call it, or a wire that goes all the way from the beginning to this part here, which is the second half of the lights. So this is their kind of their fix, or a thing that helps with not having all the lights go out at once, because it's a very simple circuit. You know, if you didn't have this third wire, it would just be these two all the way through, and if anything in the circuit, any light bulb went out, anything happened, the whole string would go. So this is just one of the ways that they make it so the entire string doesn't go out. You still have half of it even when you have a problem. But it's effectively two circuits, isolated but connected together, with positive and negative at the beginning, in the middle here, just those two, and then at the end here. Now we have to isolate this side and figure out why it's not working. So we'll walk through that. The first thing I'm going to do is visually inspect to see if there's something obvious. And, you know, this is a broken bulb. I don't know if that matters. but that's probably not a good thing. And I don't know if I broke that in here or if that was broken out there and I just didn't see it. So let's start with this one. And I'm just going to throw the bulb in there. Just see if that's it. Maybe it's that easy. Yay! It's that easy. So visually inspected, saw that this one was broken, which meant that the filament in there was probably broken. Replaced that one bulb. And now we have lights. That was pretty straightforward. Now I could have shown you just look here, see if there's a bulb out and replace it, but now you have an understanding of why some strands of lights work the way they do and some don't, and went through simple circuitry, what a circuit is and the division, and we were able to follow that back. And not only for lighting, but for anything. This kind of stuff, as you reverse engineer or figure out why something's not working, it will help you troubleshoot the next thing you look at. So it's not just about, yeah, I mean, did I spend more time than I should have on a $2.50 set of lights or $4 set of lights? Sure, because I wanted to walk through it and show you, but also I wanted to have a better understanding of how this works, because I never really worried about it. I just replaced them. But now I'm saving, well, this one and the other one that we have, you know, together I think it's $6 or $7 in lights, and if you do that every year, it costs you some money. But more importantly for me, I now know how it works, and I understand the circuitry a little bit better and why they did what they did, and why only half of it's working. So it just makes it easier to isolate the issue. I now know that any bulb anywhere in the circuit breaks the circuit. It's not just the first bulb, because in the past there have been, you know, that's either been the way that it is or that's been an assumption that people have had. So that doesn't matter. So now I know that information. When I go to troubleshoot any type of circuit or any bulb, I can use that same knowledge. So it's not about the $2.50. Some people, like I said, some people think it's crazy to spend this kind of time. Honestly, I would have just gone through, looked at the fuses, replaced the fuses, which I showed you, and then just looked at the bulb and replaced it, and it would have been, what, a minute? But knowing why and how it's all set up makes it even quicker to the next time, and prevents me from maybe throwing away something that can still be used. So many things get thrown away nowadays, and a lot of them can be fixed, I believe. I was one of the ones that used to just throw stuff away because it's easier to buy $2.50 or $3 and throw it away, but there are side effects to all that. Nope, almost forgot. One other thing that I don't know that I want to know is what happens, can you have power at the other end of this when there are lights out? Is it possible that power can pass through here? Let's find that out. So for that, I'm going to just plug in my meter here. Okay, so this meter is nice because it tells you high voltage, careful, which definitely be careful. But that beeping will let us know what's going on. If you can't read, it's saying 116, but that's less important. It's more important that the power goes through and we know that thing's making a sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bulb out of the first circuit. Okay. Put that back in. I'm going to take a bulb out of the second circuit. Still have power. Well, what if I do both? So I have both these circuits are down, but there's still power coming out the other end, which I think is important. Don't assume because the light strand's out that there's no power coming out of the other end. Don't stick your finger in there. Don't, dump water in there, or just be careful, because now we know in these type of strands, don't assume that there's no power going through it if the strand's not working. It can carry that power through and light up the second part of the strand as well. There you go. So there's technically 3 circuits going on here. There's one circuit that lights this part, another circuit that's isolated that lights this, and again, circles, circuit, circuit, and then there's the third, which goes all the way through from there to here, using effectively a separate wire from the first light, where it splits off, to the middle part, which I've probably lost right now. No, the middle part, which is here, folds it through, and that comes all the way through here to the last one. So that circuit is separate than this and this circuit. So that makes 3 circuits and this one strand of lights. Simple, but when you put them together, could make it hard to troubleshoot unless you know that. And also, just be careful, because we know, sorry, that's annoying. But just be careful. If one part of it's not working, it doesn't mean there's no power to the other part of it. There's still power. There's probably something there's just a broken circuit. And if it all is out, don't assume that there's no power coming to the other end. And we already walked through the fuse, which breaks everything, which basically there's a fuse in the plug, which, earlier in the video, which provides power to everything. And if that blows, then no lights will work. So that is a fuse. This is a fuse circuit coming out, and the fuse will go if there's an issue. So that's important to know. And that's part of the circuit that flows all the way through. All right. Hopefully you learned something. I know I did. Thanks for watching.